Our thoughts don't just affect our behavior, they affect how our children see themselves. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. Today we're talking about owning your thoughts as a parent. Owning, claiming, seeing them. This is such a game changer, and honestly, it's one of the foundational things I teach in Connect Method Parenting. So I recently had this moment with my teenagers, my two youngest teenagers. We had just gotten back from our 6-month adventure, which if you've been following along on the podcast for a while, you know that we did this incredible trip touring around the world for 6 months. And when we landed back home, we were all trying to figure out how to acclimate back to normal life again. And we had lots of stuff we were sorting through as we were unpacking things, and the kids were going and seeing friends. It was busy and chaotic. And about a week into us returning, I noticed how much stuff was being left out, how messy the house was. I was jet lagged. And clearly, as I reflect back, not equipped like I normally am. And one day I was driving one of the cars and it was so messy and dirty and I had drinks and wrappers and I just lost my cool. And I wasn't with any of my kids, but I pulled out my phone and I sent a text that, let's be honest, was a little passive aggressive. It went something like, I guess nobody cares about cleaning up after themselves. And you know what happened immediately after I sent it? That sinking feeling that I'm sure we've all had in our stomach, that voice in my head that said, yeah, that probably shouldn't have been sent. And I regretted it. And I wished that I had not hit send. I wish that I hadn't let my nervous system take over, put me into fight or flight. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. Have you ever gotten frustrated with your kids, told them what you were frustrated about, and then immediately thought, oh, goodness, that wasn't my best parenting moment. The problem was that I had gotten so caught up in my drama, in my own thinking about the situation, in my own need to be right, that I didn't take the time or have the discipline to first do my own work on my thoughts first. In that moment, in the heat of that moment, as I was tired and trying to figure out how to run the house again and organize everything and get everybody back into their systems of responsibilities and contributing, because none of that had been settled, I really allowed myself to be overtaken by the old belief of wanting to blame and justify and tell my teenagers that I was frustrated. I'm sure it came across as, I'm frustrated and it's your fault. It felt like this old itch that was dying to be scratched. Like, ooh, if I can just do this, it's going to feel so much better. And it never does. It never feels better. And yeah, there were so many reasons why I relapsed, you could say, into old beliefs, but it happened. And I was able to see it pretty quickly, but it happened. And that's fine. It happens. All of us, have things happen that get the best of us. We have things that overwhelm us. We are frustrated about a relationship or a bill or a medical condition. Something happens and we get emotionally taken over by our nervous system. This has happened to me when I've emotionally overeaten. I would think, oh, I just need one more Oreo and then I'm going to feel so much better, or one more cookie. But of course I didn't. I felt worse. What I've come to realize is that when I'm in that moment, when I think saying something or eating something or doing something is going to make me feel better, what I really need to do is look inside, self-confront, and find and own the thoughts that are trying to drive the train. What I later realized was that this wasn't at all. I know you're going to be shocked, but this wasn't at all about the dishes or the car being messy or the laundry not being put away. It was about these underlying thoughts that I hadn't addressed. Most of them were old thoughts that normally don't take over my nervous system. But again, because I was tired, I was jet lagged, I was out of practice of being home and running our home in the way we used to run it. We were all out of practice. We'd been traveling for so long. They sneaked back in. or snuck back in. Is that the right way to say it? They snuck back in. So what I decided to do after having this little setback, this little quote unquote mess up, is I sat down and I did my work to find and own my thoughts. And here are some of the thoughts I discovered. I shouldn't have to worry about them cleaning up after themselves. I shouldn't have to do this after coming home from such a great trip. My teenagers are taking advantage of me. They don't respect me, our home, our car. I'm failing at teaching responsibility. No one appreciates what I'm doing around here. I shouldn't have to keep reminding them about basic things. Other parents don't have these problems. So those were the raw, unfiltered, old thoughts that had poked their head up and were trying to get some airtime. And as soon as I looked at them and I saw, these are the thoughts that have been simmering in the background for this whole week since we've landed back in the States, these little annoyances here and there that I kept dismissing as not a big deal, but they were building up until when the dishes were again in the sink, the car was so messy, the laundry had been left out again. It was like this final straw. In chapter 7 of my book, Beliefs Are the Beginning, I talk about how our unexamined thoughts become our reality. These little thoughts that seem innocent enough can become the seeds of disconnection if we don't pay attention to them. Let me tell you about another parent I coached a while back. She was constantly frustrated with her 6-year-old son who seemed to never listen when it came time to get ready for school. Every morning, she described as a battle, and she found herself yelling more often than she wanted to. When we did a thought download together, she discovered what she was thinking, and the thoughts were, he's deliberately trying to make us late. He should be more responsible by now. Other kids his age get ready without any drama. I'm going to get in trouble if he gets late to school too often, or I'm going to get fired if I can't go to work on time. And when you look at these unexamined thoughts, once we found them and we examined them, it was no wonder that she was feeling frustrated and anxious. These thoughts were creating her emotional reality, which then fueled her actions and her reactions and ultimately created the results in her life. So there's something really powerful when we honestly look at the thoughts, the messy thoughts that we really don't want to look at, that we're embarrassed that are happening, that we can't believe we're thinking again. That's what my brain wanted to say after I had this little episode when we got home from our trip. It was so alarming that I had these thoughts, and then I had to remind myself, hey, this is a story that's living in the back of your brain. And when you have a moment of weakness, when you're not owning your thoughts, when you're not finding your thoughts, or you're not doing the work because you're tired, because you're overwhelmed, they're going to pop back. It's not a problem. And here's what I wish I would have done that would have prevented this whole scenario from happening. What I hope you all can do if you have something similar happen to you. So if I had been more disciplined in that first week we were home, what I first would have wished I would have done is I wish I would have noticed that underlying feeling of frustration before it built up to the point where it took over. Because when we feel that nagging annoyance, it's a signal that there is a thought that needs our attention. In my peace framework from my book, the first step is pause. And I talk about getting present and pausing and taking 5 minutes to write down everything going on in your brain. So I wish I would have taken 5 minutes, just written everything down about the dishes, about my teenagers, about my role as a parent, about my house. Because if I had done that, then I could have explored, I could have expanded, I could have looked deeply at what I wrote down, circling the facts, starring the thoughts, getting curious about what was really going on inside of my head, which would have created so much more awareness. And I would have been able to neutralize it, because then I would have gone into allowing and accepting the emotions, recognizing that nothing had gone wrong, that my thoughts don't mean anything about me. They don't mean anything about my kids. They don't mean anything about who I am as a parent. And it was just my nervous system's way of trying to keep me safe as we were adjusting back to real life. And only then would I have been ready to create something different, to create a new belief about the situation and to show up more consciously. And I say all of that with the simultaneous belief that nothing had gone wrong. I learned so much. It was really helpful to interrupt myself pretty quickly once I sent the text to say, oh, I don't think that's how I want to show up. What's going on? So the cost of unexamined thoughts, when we don't look at them, when we don't inspect our thoughts, we end up reacting from a place of negative emotion. And that reaction rarely gets us what we want, what we really want, which is connection with our kids, a better relationship, more impact, more influence. So after I sent that text, I will tell you, my teenagers didn't suddenly become more responsible. They became defensive. And I could see it happening before my face. And I thought, oh my goodness, I pushed them away. I started a little battle with them. So they became a little defensive, a little prickly. And they came back and said, wow, that was a pretty weird message you just sent us. And they're absolutely right, because I was frustrated and victim-y when I sent it. So the cost of not finding and owning my thoughts was disconnection, the exact opposite of what I teach and believe. And it's okay. We're all going to have these moments. So it's not about being perfect. It's about finding the moments when we don't show up the way we want to, owning it and turning it around, which I was able to do fairly quickly. And you'll find the more you find and own your thoughts, the more you implement Connect Method Parenting, the more you can turn around situations where you accidentally revert to old ways of being. So let me share another example from a mom I worked with. She had a thought that her 3-year-old was manipulating her with his tantrums. And this thought made her feel very angry and resentful, which led her to implement stricter consequences and more timeouts. And the result was more tantrums, more power struggles, and a deteriorating relationship. So when she finally examined this thought and replaced it with, my 3-year-old is communicating the only way she knows how, everything began to change. She felt compassion instead of resentment, which allowed her to respond with connection instead of correction. The tantrums started to decrease. Their relationship began to improve, and things got better and better. This is the power of finding and owning your thoughts. We are able to take responsibility for the things we have control over, which is our state of being. And who we are being matters so much, because who we are being creates an emotional reaction, and that emotional reaction inside of us fuels our actions. And our actions are seasoned with the emotions that are fueling them. So how do we get better at finding those thoughts before they cause damage? Here are some clues that you might have some unexamined thoughts brewing in the background. 1, you feel a low-grade irritation with your child that doesn't seem to have a specific cause. 2, you find yourself making sweeping statements like "you always" or "you never." 3, you overreact to small infractions. 4, you feel resentful when doing things for your kids. 5, you're keeping score of who's doing what in the family. 6, you notice yourself sighing heavily or rolling your eyes. 7, you're complaining about the kids to others more than usual. 8, you feel triggered by behaviors that normally don't bother you. 9, you avoid spending time with your kids. And 10, you catch yourself thinking, I don't want to deal with this. So when you notice these signs, it is time to pause. Do the first step in peace, do a thought download. Take out a piece of paper, open up the app if you're in League, write down every thought you're having about the situation. Don't censor yourself. Be honest about what you're thinking, even if it's not pretty. I was coaching someone not too long ago, and they were saying, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I don't know what's going on. I asked myself what I was thinking, and I can't access it. What we realized was the reason she wasn't able to access her thoughts about something was because she didn't want to be having that thought. So my thought about my teenagers was, I'm not handling this very well. I'm not managing them very well. I'm not parenting them very well. I didn't want to believe that about myself. So I just pretended that I wasn't thinking it. I just didn't pay attention to it. And it created a situation where I got overtaken by some not helpful thoughts and reacted in a way I didn't like. And this mom that I was coaching, she was having thoughts like, I'm not good enough to do this. I don't think I'm a good enough mom. As soon as she heard that thought, she voiced it. She said it out loud. She was able to dismiss it because she was like, that's not true. That's not really right. I don't really believe that. And that began the unwinding of that and the ability for her to show up differently. But when you're having a thought like that, whether it's true or not, whether it's logical or illogical, it's in your brain. It's going to have an effect on your life. It's going to create feelings. It's going to create a reaction. And we need to look at it so that we can let it go, so it doesn't drive the train. Uninspected thoughts are going to cause so much damage. Look at them even if they're messy, because once you found those thoughts, the next step is to own them without judgment. This doesn't mean you have to keep believing them, but you do need to acknowledge that they're there. In my case, I needed to own that I was thinking, my teenagers don't respect me and I'm failing at teaching responsibility. Not because these thoughts were true, but because they were affecting my behavior. Owning your thoughts gives you authority over them. It allows you to decide whether you want to keep believing them or choose something different. I remember working with a dad once who was convinced that his 12-year-old daughter was lazy because she didn't want to do her homework. He owned that thought. He looked at it. He realized how much it was coloring his interactions with her. Every conversation he realized was about productivity and achievement rather than connection. So once he found the thought and he owned it and he thought, I don't like the way that thought is causing me to show up, he was able to question it. Was she really lazy? Was something else going on? It turned out she was struggling with some of the things she was learning at school. So she was avoiding homework because she felt unable to do it. She felt like she wasn't smart. So his thoughts about her laziness had prevented him from seeing what was really happening. And once he turned that around, things began to change. After I apologized to my teenagers for my passive-aggressive text, and yes, a sincere apology is always appropriate when we mess up, I did the work to choose thoughts that would create connection instead of disconnection. So thoughts like, my teenagers are learning responsibility. They're acclimating back to real life, and that takes time. This is normal. This is normal teenage behavior. It's not a reflection of my parenting. I can still set limits with connection, with firmness, with compassion instead of frustration. All of us are doing our best right now, and this is an opportunity for all of us to learn, for all of us to grow, not to punish. These thoughts felt true to me and led me to much more productive conversations about household responsibilities, about cleaning the house, about who was going to do what. It allowed us to begin to establish a new way of functioning in our home after being gone for so long. The mom with the 3-year-old began to choose to believe my child is having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. Tantrums are normal developmental behavior, and I can be calm even when my child isn't. And that dad with the 12-year-old began to choose, my daughter may be struggling with something that I don't understand yet. My job is to support her, not judge her. Our relationship is more important than her homework habits. So when we choose thoughts that create connection, we can start showing up differently. We're more patient, we can be more understanding, and we are a heck of a lot more effective. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that it's the little thoughts, the little tiny ones that we dismiss as unimportant that often cause the biggest problems. It's like that junk drawer in your kitchen. Do you guys have one? If you don't, bravo. We definitely have one. And oftentimes I'll open it up and I'll think, this is so messy. I don't have time to deal with this. I have more important things to do today. I'll do this later. And one day leads to another until eventually I need to find something in that junk drawer. Like the little thing that pops out the SIM card. And I know it's in there somewhere, but it is so buried in paper clips and broken pencils and erasers that it takes me a long time to find it. And it's easy to get frustrated thinking, where is the little, I don't know what it's called, little device, that pokes out the SIMs. So had I organized it, if I had opened up the junk drawer 2 weeks before and said, this is kind of messy, I want to spend a little bit of time addressing it, it would have made it so much easier to find what I was looking for. And the same is true with our parenting thoughts. Those little irritations, if left unaddressed, become big explosions that can negatively impact, even damage our connection with our kids. I remember a mom I worked with years ago who had this tiny thought that her son was too sensitive. Seemed harmless enough, but over time this thought led her to dismiss his feelings. She started pushing him to toughen up, and it created quite a distance between them. And by the time he was a teenager, he had stopped sharing his feelings altogether with her. When we finally examined the thoughts that she was having about her son and replaced them with, my son feels things deeply, and that's a strength, things began to turn around. So our thoughts don't just affect our behavior, they affect how our children see themselves. Kids are incredibly perceptive. They pick up on our unspoken thoughts and internalize them. So if we're constantly thinking, my child is so difficult, they may begin to see that as a reality for themselves. They may adapt that belief. If we're thinking they're irresponsible, they may incorporate that into their identity. But the reverse is also true. So when you genuinely think that your child's doing their best, when you see their struggles as normal and developmentally appropriate rather than a problem or personal failing on their part, they will internalize that too. They'll internalize the thought, hey, I'm doing my best. I'm trying my hardest. This is normal. It's okay that I'm struggling. In my book, I talk about how nothing has gone wrong here. And I firmly, firmly believe that, especially when your child is having off-track behavior. This one thought alone can really transform your parenting. Instead of seeing misbehavior as a problem to fix, you can begin to see it as information to understand about what your child needs or what they're going through. Let me share some practical tools that have helped me and the parents I worked with. One, the thought download, doing it every single day. That's one of the missing things for me that week after we just got back. I had not taken the time to do my thought download. So I wasn't spending 5 to 10 minutes each morning writing down my thoughts about myself, about my kids, about my day, about my house. But when we do that thought download, when we just write down everything that's going through our brain, we don't judge what's coming up. We just get it out on paper. It can be so helpful. Another thing is the trigger tracker. So when you're feeling triggered by your kid's behavior, write it down. What happened? What are your thoughts about it? How did those thoughts make you feel? What did you do as a result? What ultimately was created? Another one is the thought swap. So once you've identified a thought that's not serving you, try on a different thought. Like you try on clothes. Which one feels best? Which one creates the result you want? Another one is reality check. Ask yourself when you identify the thoughts, is this thought 100% true? Could the opposite be just as true? This is going to help you loosen that tight grip on that thought that makes it feel absolutely true, but it's actually not absolutely true. And it'll help you start to release it and start to be open to other possibilities. And number 5, the future self question. Ask yourself, what would my future self think about this situation? And when I say future self, what I mean by that is the parent you want to be in a year from now, in 10 years from now. What would that version of you think about this situation? What would they believe about it? How would they feel about it? This creates helpful distance from your current thoughts, and it will tap you into some beautiful wisdom. One mom I worked with was using the trigger tracker consistently and started to discover that every time her son dawdled in the morning, she thought, he's going to make me late for work, and my boss is going to think I'm unprofessional, and the school isn't going to like it. And this thought created anxiety, which led to yelling, which made her son shut down and move even slower. And when she started to swap that thought for, I can plan our morning to account for his dawdling, she felt calmer. She started waking up a little bit earlier to give themselves a little more buffer time. She created a visual schedule that helped her son move faster, and things began to change. So this week, I want you to pay attention to those little nagging thoughts about your kids or about your parenting. Don't dismiss anything as unimportant. When you notice a thought that doesn't feel good, I want you to write it down. I want you to look at it. I want you to hold space for it without judgment. And then I want you to decide, is this thought allowing me to be the kind of parent I want to be? And if not, I want you to really look at it. I want you to see what other thought, what new thought could you choose that could feel both true and helpful? And then I want you to practice thinking it until it becomes your new default. Remember, you have control over what you believe about your child when their behavior is struggling. And the more you believe they are doing the best, the safer they'll feel. So try these specific exercises. Identify one reoccurring challenge with your child. Maybe it's bedtime or homework. Maybe the siblings are always fighting. Maybe it's mealtime. Identify one reoccurring challenge and then do a thought download about the challenge. Write for 5 minutes without stopping, and then circle the thoughts that feel the worst or that you find yourself thinking the most often. And then for each circled thought, ask, is this helping me create connection? And then, is this thought true? Is there another way to see this? And then choose a new thought to practice this week. Set reminders on your phone to remind you to think this new thought several times a day. What we need is a lot of repetition to create new neural pathways. So years ago, one of my kiddos was really struggling in the morning. Every morning seemed to have something happen. It felt like a battle, tears, complaints, begging to stay home, stomach aches, And I could tell in that moment that after this had happened for a while, that I was getting resistant to her behavior. So I'm like, gotta look at my thoughts. What's happening? I don't want to resist it. I want to accept. I want to meet her where she is. I want to come alongside. So I sat down and I thought, okay, what are my thoughts about this? And I noticed that I had some thoughts that weren't helpful. Like, this is too much to handle. I'm not equipped for this. Other parents don't have to deal with this. She's going to fall behind academically if this continues. What if she never comes out of this? And these thoughts led me, I noticed, to feel overwhelmed, inadequate, and a little bit resentful. And from this emotional state, I could see what would happen. I would push her. I would dismiss her feelings. I would create more anxiety for both of us. And I didn't want any of that. So I noticed what I was wanting to think, what the default way my brain wanted to think about the situation. So I found those thoughts and I owned them. And I could see how if I didn't interrupt these thoughts, they were going to make the situation so much worse. So after I found the thoughts and I owned them, I chose to think something different instead. I thought thoughts like, this is hard, we can figure it out. I'm exactly the parent she needs right now. Her health is more important than perfect attendance. And this season is not forever. This makes sense. She's struggling. From this new mental place, from this new collection of thoughts, I was able to approach mornings with so much more patience and understanding. We collaborated on solutions. We problem solved. I was able to come alongside her emotions instead of invalidating them. And it didn't resolve overnight, but our relationship strengthened and the trust grew. She knew I was working for her and with her, not against her. And things did begin to get easier. And this is what I mean when I say that finding and owning your thoughts will change everything. It's not just about feeling better as a parent, though that's certainly a benefit, but it's also about creating the conditions for genuine connection with your child, which is the foundation for everything. And it also allows you to show up in the most calm, regulated way possible, which is going to set everyone up for success. Over the years of working with so many parents, I've noticed some common thought patterns that tend to destroy connection. I want you to see if any of these sound familiar. There's the catastrophizer. So if my child doesn't learn this now, they'll never learn it. This behavior means they're never going to be successful. So these thoughts create panic and urgency, which lead to overreacting. Then we have the comparer. And the comparer will have thoughts like, other parents don't have these problems, or my friend's kids would never act this way. So these thoughts create shame and inadequacy, which lead to disconnection. Then we have the crystal ball reader. The crystal ball reader is going to have thoughts like, my child is going to end up like so-and-so, that troubled person, or they're never going to get a job. These thoughts create fear and control, which lead to micromanaging. Then we have the mind reader. The mind reader has thoughts like, my child knows this upsets me and does it anyway. Or they're just trying to push my buttons. These thoughts create resentment and defensiveness, which lead to power struggles. And then we have the personalizer. The personalizer is going to think thoughts like, my child's behavior is a reflection of my parenting. If I were a better parent, this wouldn't be happening. And these thoughts create shame. They create insecurity, which leads to inconsistency. It can lead to passivity. It can lead to a whole slew of problems that will not strengthen the relationship. In my book, I talk about how your parenting report card does not include your child's behavior. And I talk about this because it's such an important concept, because so many of us are walking around thinking we're failing as parents because our kids aren't behaving perfectly. Just not true. Humans behave imperfectly, no matter what their age. So your child's behavior is information about them, not about you. Now, are there going to be times where you're going to pick up on clues or see things that are happening and notice how you might show up better, or see something that you're not doing that would be helpful for your child? Absolutely. But that comes from a place of capacity, from a place of confidence, not from a place of shame or doubt. So when you can separate your worth as a parent from your child's behavior, you're going to free yourself to respond with connection instead of correction. Let's talk for a moment about why our thoughts are so powerful. There's actually fascinating neuroscience behind this. So when you have a thought, it triggers a cascade of neurochemicals in your brain. Different thoughts trigger different chemicals. Thoughts of danger or judgment trigger hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Thoughts of connection and safety trigger bonding hormones like oxytocin. Your child's nervous system is incredibly attuned to yours. So when your thoughts trigger stress hormones, your child can sense it, even if you think you're hiding it well. Their nervous system responds by going into protection mode, fight, flight, fawn, freeze. And this is why you can say all of the right words, but if your underlying thoughts are judgmental or frustrated, your child will respond to those unspoken thoughts rather than your words. And on the flip side, when your thoughts genuinely create feelings of compassion and understanding, your child's nervous system is going to pick up on those too, which is really awesome and also kind of humbling. And we don't have to get this perfect, but it's good to know that it's happening. They feel safe when we are coming from a place of compassion and understanding and confidence, and we have a regulated nervous system. They're going to feel safe, which allows their prefrontal cortex, that's the thinking part of their brain, to stay online. This is the neuroscience behind what I call seeing your child, not fixing your child in my book. So when you truly see your child through the lens of compassionate thoughts, their brain can tell. When you're staying in the lead, their brain can tell, and then they can relax and they become more receptive to your guidance. They want to listen to you. Now, I want to be really clear about something. Changing your thoughts is a journey, not an event. So you're not going to listen to this podcast, do one thought download, and suddenly have perfect thoughts forever. I've been doing this work for almost 2 decades, and I still have moments like the one I described with my teenagers, and it happens. We all do. But the difference is now I recognize those moments really quickly. I don't beat myself up about them, and I know how to get back on track within in that situation, just a few minutes. One mom that I worked with described this so beautifully. She said, I used to think I was a bad mom because I had bad thoughts about my kids sometimes. Now I realize I'm a conscious mom because I notice those thoughts and I choose better ones. That's so good. That's the goal. Not perfection, but consciousness, awareness, the ability to find your thoughts, to own them, and to create ones that create connection. And here's something else that's so important for you to understand. Sometimes the new thoughts you choose, the ones that you think, ooh, that's beautiful, I want to believe that, they're going to feel like lies at first, and that's normal. Your brain's used to thinking those old thoughts, and it wants to hold on to them. It's going to resist the new ones. So for example, if you've been thinking, my child never listens to me for years and years and years, and the thought that you want to believe is my child is learning to listen, it might feel fake, and that's okay. Keep practicing it anyway. Look for advice that supports it. Ask for help. If you're in league, come to office hours, do your daily pieces, do the exercises that I ask you to do, and eventually you will believe that new thought. Your brain will catch up eventually. The key is to find thoughts that feel both true and helpful. So if a thought doesn't feel true to you, your brain's going to reject it. If it doesn't help you create connection, it's not serving your parenting goals. So for example, the thought, my child is deliberately trying to make me angry, might feel true in the moment, but it doesn't help you create connection. The thought, my child is having a hard time, not giving me a hard time, might feel more helpful. But if it doesn't feel true to you yet, it's not going to stick. So look for thoughts in the middle, ones that feel true enough and helpful enough to be worth practicing. So some examples might be, this behavior is normal for their age. We're both learning here. I don't have to solve this problem perfectly right now. I can be calm even when my child isn't. This moment doesn't define our relationship. These thoughts acknowledge the reality of the situation while creating space for connection. And I want to end by talking about the importance of self-compassion in this process. Finding and owning your thoughts can be very uncomfortable. You might discover thoughts you're not proud of. I certainly did when I was going through my situation I was describing earlier with my kids. You might realize you've been creating disconnection without meaning to. And when this happens, it's so crucial that you approach yourself with the same compassion you want to show your children. I'm always saying, if you could have done better, you would have. And this applies to your thoughts too. If you could have thought better thoughts, you would have. Now that you know better, you have a higher chance to do better. One practice that helps me is to talk to myself the way I would talk to a dear friend who was struggling. So if a friend told me she had sent a passive-aggressive text to her teenagers, I wouldn't say, wow, you really messed up. What kind of parent does that? I'd say, that sounds really frustrating. Sounds like you were struggling. We all have moments like that. What do you think you'll do differently next time? I'd give my friend grace. I'd understand that that's really not her. That was just a moment that she had where she was struggling, where she wasn't thinking at her best. She wasn't showing up at her highest level. So give yourself that same grace. It will make the process of finding and owning your thoughts so much more productive and a lot less painful. So in addition to the exercises I mentioned earlier, I want to give you one more powerful practice for this week. At the end of each day, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. 1, what thoughts served my connection with my child today or my children? 2, what thoughts got in the way of connection? And number 3, what thoughts do I want to practice tomorrow? And write down your answers, even if it's just a sentence or 2. This simple practice will help you become more aware of your thoughts and more intentional about choosing ones that create connection. So finding and owning your thoughts, it's not about beating yourself up for having those negative thoughts, because we all have them. We're all going to have moments. It's about becoming aware of them so they don't run your parenting on autopilot. When you can find thoughts, own them, and choose ones that create connection, you will become the calm, connected parent you want to be, even when the dishes are piled in the sink, the car is really dirty, and the laundry has not been put away. Remember, you already have everything you need inside of you to change your home. Connect Method Parenting just cracks open that parenting genius inside of you and helps you see it, understand how to tap into it, and how to start living from that place so you can create exactly what you want. Your thoughts are the key that's going to unlock your genius, and we need to pay attention to all of them, the ones we love and the ones we don't love. All of them are the keys that are going to help us unlock our genius. So start paying attention to them today and watch how your parenting transforms. So if you have any questions or you want to share your experiences with finding and owning your parenting thoughts, I would love for you to send me a DM on Instagram. It's just at Connect Method Parenting. You can send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you. I'll respond back. And if you like today's episode, I'd also love to read your review of the podcast. All right, you all, that's all I have for you today. We'll talk to you soon. Go connect with your kids and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.